Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Patotsav Mahamahotsav ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is entitled Creation of the Universal Form. Text number 10. Smaran Vishwasrajamisho Vijñapitam Adhokshajaha Virajam Matapatsvena Tejasaisham Vivrittaye. Word for meaning: Smaran, remembering, Vishwasrajam, of the demigods entrusted with the task of cosmic construction, Ishaha, the Supreme Lord, Vijñapitam, as he was prayed for, Adhokshajaha, the transcendence, Virajam, the gigantic universal form, Atapat, considered thus, Svena, by his own, Tejasa, energy, Esham, for them, Vivrittaye, for understanding. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation: the Supreme Lord is the super soul of all the demigods entrusted with the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation. Being thus prayed to by the demigods, he thought to himself and thus manifested the gigantic form for their understanding. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The impersonalists are captivated by the gigantic universal form of the Supreme. They think that the control behind this gigantic manifestation is imagination. Intelligent persons, however, can estimate the value of the cause by observing the wonders of the effects. For example, the individual human body does not develop from the womb of the mother independently, but because the living entity, the soul, is within the body. Without the living entity, a material body cannot automatically take shape or develop. When any material object displays development, it must be understood that there is a spiritual soul within the manifestation. The gigantic universe is developed just as the body of a child develops. The conception that the transcendence enters within the universe is therefore logical. As the materialists cannot find the soul and the super soul within the heart, similarly, for want of sufficient knowledge, they cannot see the Supreme Soul. They cannot see that the Supreme Soul is the cause of the universe. The Lord is therefore described in the Vedic language as Avan Manasa Gocharaha, beyond the conception of words and minds. Due to a poor fund of knowledge, the mental speculators try to bring the Supreme within the purview of words and minds. But the Lord refuses to be so intelligible. The speculator has no adequate words or mind to gauge the infinity of the Lord. The Lord is called Adhokshaja, or the person who is beyond perception by the blunt, limited potency of our senses. One cannot perceive the transcendental name or form of the Lord by mental speculation. The mundane PhDs are completely unable to speculate on the Supreme with their limited senses. Such attempts by the puffed up PhDs are compared to the philosophy of the frog in the well. A frog in a well was informed of the gigantic Pacific Ocean, and he began to puff himself up in order to understand or measure the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean. Ultimately, the frog burst and died. The title PhD can also be interpreted as plow department, a title meant for the tillers in the paddy field. The attempt of the tillers in the paddy field to understand the cosmic manifestation and the cause behind such wonderful work can be compared to the endeavor of the frog in the well to calculate the measurement of the Pacific Ocean. The Lord can reveal himself only to a person who is submissive and who engages in his transcendental loving service. The demigods controlling the elements and ingredients of universal affairs prayed to the Lord for guidance, and thus he manifested his gigantic form as he did at the request of Arjuna. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This is a very interesting verse. Not only this verse, but the entire description in this chapter. Creation of the universal form. The subject matter of creation is actually not easy to understand for the simple reason that in the background of this work of creation, the Supreme Lord is active in so many ways, including the demigods, all the living beings in this whole creation are bewildered by the influence of the illusory energy, because of which they are unable to understand how the Lord is working in the background, enabling the creation, maintenance, destruction of this whole cosmic manifestation. Now, the only way we can understand this is by revelation. What's the meaning of revelation? The Supreme Lord reveals by giving us knowledge, by giving us the vision, by giving us intelligence. In so many ways, the Lord is revealing. For example, this Srimad Bhagavatam itself is revealing the process of creation through the words spoken by Shukadev Goswami when he is instructing Parikshit Maharaj, or through the words spoken by Maitreya Rishi when he is answering questions asked by Vidura, or when Vyasadeva is compiling this Vedic literature, this Srimad Bhagavatam. Vyasadeva is documenting how does the creation take place, what is the process involved. Now, all these personalities, whether it is Shukadev Goswami, or it is Vyasadeva, or it is Maitreya Rishi, all of them have got that revelation in the parampara system. So, we also, if at all we are inquisitive, if at all we want to understand how the creation takes place, then we have to follow the parampara system. We have to receive this knowledge. Evam parampara praptam. It is received. Only when there is revelation, and the process is tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. A self-realized, enlightened spiritual master who is enlightened in the subject matter of the truth, such a spiritual master reveals. When a proper disciple or a student in the transcendental subject matter is actually a surrendered soul, pranipatena, pariprashnena, makes suitable inquiries, relevant inquiries, and also is submissive to adopt the method of rendering service to the spiritual master, and thereby satisfy the spiritual master through the submissive attitude and through service and making proper inquiries, that the spiritual master is pleased to reveal, to enlighten the disciple. Here we can see in the example of Vidura. Vidura is actually showing us by his example, because Vidura is a pure devotee. He doesn't require enlightenment actually, but he has assumed a humble position because of his birth, inferior birth. He's born, he's appeared as the son of a maidservant. So, as somebody who is having an ordinary birth or an inferior birth, so Vidura did not go to any Gurukul, but he is seriously interested in the knowledge of the transcendence. So in search of this knowledge, he set out on pilgrimage. He is visiting the holy places and he is searching for somebody who can enlighten him. He kept on traveling to various places of pilgrimage till he came to the spot where Uddhava, the great devotee of the Lord, was actually present. So when Vidura met Uddhava, he made inquiries from the Uddhava. So Uddhava, he remembered the Supreme Lord who had instructed him before the Lord's departure, before Krishna's departure. Krishna had instructed Uddhava and Maitreya Rishi, both of them. in the transcendental subject matter. And Uddhava, as soon as he was reminded by Vidura through his inquiries, Vidura's inquiries about the Supreme Lord, immediately he went into ecstasy, being reminded of the Lord. And then he actually began to recollect the Lord's pastimes, which naturally came to him because he is always situated in Krishna consciousness. So the pastimes he recounted, recollected. And after that, Vidura began to make inquiries, further inquiries. So when Vidura began to make further inquiries, Uddhava directed Vidura to approach Maitreya Rishi. Out of respect for the elderly Maitreya Rishi, Uddhava directed Vidura to go to Maitreya Rishi. And Vidura obeyed, followed the instructions of Uddhava and approached Maitreya Rishi. Maitreya Rishi, seeing the sincerity of Vidura, he began to instruct Vidura. So Vidura is making so many inquiries. Now Vidura is making inquiries on our behalf. So he has assumed a humble position, but he is making inquiries on our behalf. Just like Arjuna made inquiries from Krishna on our behalf, and Krishna accordingly spoke Bhagavad Gita for our benefit, not for Arjuna's benefit, because Arjuna is a pure devotee. Similarly, Vidura is a pure devotee. So Vidura doesn't require enlightenment, but for our sake, Vidura is making inquiries. So Vidura is inquiring about the process of creation, and Maitreya Rishi is describing what happened at the beginning of creation. And we have come to the point where the Supreme Lord, by his transcendental glance on the material energy, activates the material energy, and the material energy differentiates into the elements. So the previous chapter described the elements being manifested, the 24 elements, and then the elements have to be combined for the creation to progress further. Now, how will the elements be combined? The demigods are entrusted with the task of constructing, as this verse says, today's verse says, the demigods entrusted with the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation, means this whole universe. The demigods are entrusted with this task. And they were unable to proceed with constructing the universe as it was before. They were unable to proceed because, as is described in a verse earlier, O Supreme Self, they are offering prayers. In the previous chapter, they are offering prayers to the Supreme Lord. O Supreme Self, please give us, who are created in the beginning from the Mahat Tattva, the total cosmic energy, your kind directions on how we shall act. Kindly award us your perfect knowledge and potency so that we can render you service in the different departments of subsequent creation. Up to a certain point, the Supreme Lord, in his incarnation as the Purusha Avatara, beginning with Mahavishnu, who initiates the whole creation, Mahavishnu. And then Mahavishnu expands into each universe as Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, so that Garbhodakshayi Vishnu is the Lord of all these demigods who are created for the sake of this participating in the construction of this entire universe as it was before the destruction of the previous time. So the demigods are unable to proceed further unless they are empowered by the Lord. They require potency, they require knowledge, they require directions on how to act. That is in this prayer, the 51st verse of the 5th chapter in this 3rd canto. They are praying. So they want to render service in participating in the further construction of the entire universe, but they are unable to do so without directions from the Supreme Lord. So this entire description here in this portion of the Bhagavatam clearly establishes that the creation begins only when the Lord initiates, the Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead initiates this creation. And for the creation to progress, at every stage, the Lord has to actually give directions, give knowledge, give potency. And there are certain steps which is possible only for the Lord to perform. For example, these elements, this 24 elements, actually it said 23 elements. The 23 elements to combine. It is not possible for the demigods to combine these elements until the Lord manifested the universal form. That is explained in the beginning of this chapter, the 6th chapter. As the Lord in his plenary portion entered into the elements of the universal creation, they transformed. That means the elements transformed into the gigantic form in which all the planetary systems and all movable and immovable creations rest. You see? So the Lord entered. Actually, the Lord enters as Paramatma. So one description that is given elsewhere by Prabhupada is that the Paramatma of the total material energy is Mahavishnu. Because Mahavishnu enters into the total material energy, which is lying dormant, only then the material energy is activated. Similarly, after the material energy is activated and differentiates into the elements, the Lord has to enter into the elements, and then they transform into the gigantic form of the Vishwarupa or Virat Rupa. Only then the elements transform into this form of the Virat Rupa. So what is this Virat Rupa? Virat Rupa is a form manifested by the Lord, consisting of all these material elements in the form of this whole universe itself. The form of the universe is the Virat Rupa, the form of the Lord, as this universe itself, the universal form. Now, this universal form is a very, very special form in that it is not an eternal form like the form of the Lord in the spiritual world. It is not an eternal form. It is manifested only for the sake of this creation. So it is as Prabhupada describes here, yeah. The Vishwarupa or the Virat Rupa, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, which is very much appreciated by the impersonalists. So Prabhupada has made a comment on the impersonal, I'll come to that. Is not an eternal form of the Lord. It is manifested by the supreme will of the Lord after the ingredients of material creation. What are the ingredients of material creation? The 23 elements. Lord Krishna exhibited this Virat or Vishwarupa to Arjuna just to convince the impersonalists that he is the original personality of Godhead. If you carefully read the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada explains this point in detail. Please read that. Krishna exhibited the Virat Rupa. It is not that Krishna was exhibited by the Virat Rupa. Is Krishna's form coming out of the Virat Rupa? Or Virat Rupa is a form exhibited by Krishna? This has to be very, very clearly understood here. Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, eternally present in his original form. So he appears and disappears in this material world as incarnation. Krishna exhibited his Virat Rupa or his Vishwarupa. So Virat Rupa is not therefore an eternal form of the Lord exhibited in the spiritual sky. The spiritual sky, the eternal forms many unlimited forms of the Lord as Narayana, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Krishna, Balaram, Vasudeva, Narayana, so many forms of the one Supreme Lord, all transcendental form, and they are also eternal in the spiritual sky, in the spiritual world. So that eternal form of the Lord is eternally present in the spiritual world. But this Vishwarupa or Virat Rupa is a material manifestation of the Lord. Mind you, the Lord does not have a material form. He doesn't have a material form. But he manifests a Virat Rupa which is made of the material elements for the sake of this creation. Now, Prabhupada gives an example for us to understand. The Archa Vigraha or the worshipable deity in a temple is a similar manifestation of the Lord for the neophytes. Because as neophyte devotees, we cannot see the Lord in his transcendental form. He's present in his transcendental form. He's present everywhere. He's present in the heart of every living being. This is explained in the Brahma Samhita. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santas sadaiva hrudayeshu vilokayanti yam shama sundaram achintya gunaswarupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So Brahma's prayers to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, he says, those whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of love, Premanjana, they are able to see the Lord in their heart, always. Santas sadaiva hrudayeshu vilo. Santa there refers to devotees. What kind of devotees? Those who are able to smear their eyes with the ointment of love of Krishna. They are able to see whom? Yam Shama Sundaram. They're able to see Shama Sundara, the original form of the Supreme Lord. Because of Krishna Prema, they're able to see Krishna as Shama Sundara. And that Shama Sundara is Achintya Gunaswarupam. Inconceivable potencies he has got, qualities he has got, unlimited qualities. He's the embodiment of all those qualities. Govindam Adipurusha. He is actually none other than Govinda, the Adipurusha, original personality of Godhead. So the devotees are always the advanced transcendentalists, but advanced transcendental refers to devotees, pure devotees. They are always able to see the Lord within their own heart. They're always able to see the Lord in the spiritual world, in the material world, everywhere the Lord is present. He is present everywhere by his omnipresence. Omnipresence means he is not limited. He is the unlimited Lord. He is present everywhere. So that Lord is seen only by the pure devotees. And what about us, the neophytes, or those who are not pure devotees? For their sake, the Lord manifests the Archa Vigraha, the deity in the temple, worshipable deity. Archa Vigraha means worshipable deity. Now, this deity form is it is made up of what? Material element. Now, the Lord does not have a form made of material elements. He does not have a form made. So both the Archa Vigraha and the Virat are non-different from the eternal form of the Lord, but they are manifest only for certain time for the purpose for which they are being manifested by the Lord. It is for our sake. The Lord has mercifully appeared as the Archa Vigraha, appeared as the Virat Rupa, appears as the Virat Rupa. So this Virat Rupa is another material manifestation of the Lord for the sake of this material creation. So it is said here, he thought to himself that the demigods will be unable to do the further work of subsequent creation task entrusted to them if he does not manifest the gigantic form of the Virat for their understanding. For their understanding. Vivrittaye. Svena tejasa esham vivrittaye. Svena tejasa. By his own power, he manifested the gigantic form of the Virat Rupa for their understanding. So, Prabhupada in the purport, he particularly is talking about how this Virat Rupa to understand. It is not possible by speculation. It is not possible by our own independent endeavor or research, or by our cultivation of knowledge, or by our meditation process. No, you cannot. Karma, jnana, yoga, tapasya, all these are not the way one can realize or understand what is this Vishwarupa or Virat Rupa. So, the important point Prabhupada makes in the purport is that the impersonalists are captivated by these Virat Rupa. They're very much captivated by this Virat Rupa. A description of this Virat Rupa is there in all the scriptures, all the important scriptures. Just like the Purusukta Prayer that appears in the original Rig Veda, and it is there in the Bhagavatam also, it's there in the Upanishads. This Purusukta describes the Virat Rupa. Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha Sahasra. You are familiar, you would have heard this Purusukta prayer. Devotees chant during Abhishek sometimes. So this Purusukta is a prayer offered by the demigods when they approach Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, the maintainer Vishnu, in his abode in Shvetadvipa. They stand on this shore of the Shvetadvipa and they offer prayers. Particularly the 10th canto, it is described the demigods when they went to pray to the Lord to actually solve the problem on the earth. Earth was overburdened by demoniac persons who were posing as kings but were actually demons, simply exploiting the people. So the demigods offer this Purusukta prayer. Now, the Purusukta prayer describes the Supreme Lord in his Virat Rupa. So, because the scriptures are describing this Virat Rupa, the impersonalists, they are captivated by this Virat Rupa, but they are actually unable to understand that behind this Virat Rupa or Vishwarupa, there is the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. That they are unable to understand. So they think, the impersonalists think, that the control behind this gigantic manifestation is imagination. They think it's simply imaginary. But anybody is little intelligent can understand, if at all this Virat Rupa or Vishwarupa or anything in this world is actually developing and growing and manifesting so many wonderful effects, it is not possible without a spiritual touch. And in the case of the Virat Rupa, the spiritual touch for the development is because the Supreme Lord in his plenary portion as Paramatma has entered into this cosmic manifestation as Paramatma. So, in the earlier verse, it was told the Supreme Lord entered. He entered into the elements. The 6th verse, Lord in his plenary portion entered into the elements of the universal creation, and then they transformed into the gigantic form. So this transformation, how does it happen? At one stage, only elements are there. Then the next stage, there is this huge, gigantic Virat Rupa. So how did that transformation take place of the elements into the Vishwarupa? That is because the Lord entered as Paramatma. So without spiritual touch, nothing develops, nothing material develops. Just like Prabhupada gives the example that a material body cannot automatically take shape or develop without the entering of the spirit soul within the material body. Just like parents combine and the secretions of the mother and father forms a embryo. But that embryo is simply some dead matter, that's all. It develops only after a spirit soul takes shelter of these secretions, combination of secretions. A living entity, a spirit soul, guided by the Paramatma. Again, without Paramatma's guidance, it's not possible for the spirit soul to enter. So guided by the Paramatma, the spirit soul enters the combination of secretion of mother and father. And then the body begins to develop in the mother's womb. And later on, the body comes out and The body again is sustained only because the presence of the soul, only because of the presence of the soul. Of course, the soul is not independent. The soul is completely dependent on the super soul for everything, for digesting. That's explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Like for digesting the food we eat, the Supreme Lord is present as Vaishwanara, as the fire of digestion. For us to breathe air, the Lord is present as prana. So like that, the Lord's presence in our body in so many different manifestations of His is only the way in which this body can be sustained by the soul. So that's elaborately explained in the scriptures, and particularly in Bhagavad Gita in concise way, Krishna explains that. But here the point is, any material object displays development only because of the presence of spirit within it. Similarly, this whole cosmic manifestation, it develops and only because of the presence of the Paramatma within this. That's why the Paramatma who is entered into this entire universe is called Vishwatma. He is the soul of the universe. Kunti Devi, when offering prayers to Krishna, she says, you are Vishwatma. You are the soul of the universe. So Krishna only in his plenary portion enters into this universe, and then the universe develops. Now, in the Vedic language, it is clearly explained, Avam Manasa Gochara. The Lord is not understood by descriptions of words or even by the mind, mental speculation. He's beyond. He's called Adhokshaja. Adhokshaja. Akshaja means that which is perceptible by descriptions or by conception of the mind. But beyond this is called Adhokshaja, beyond this Akshaja. So Adhokshaja is the Lord who is beyond the perception by our blunt limited potency of the senses. Senses include the mind also. Beyond the conception of the mind, not possible to perceive the Lord, the transcendental Lord within this whole creation, or even within our heart, or even in the form of the Archa Vigraha, or even when he appears as an incarnation. None of these transcendental manifestations of the Lord can be understood by our mental speculation, or by studying the descriptions of words, or by trying to put forth a philosophy, or by several philosophers arguing, debating, discussing, theorizing, and imagining and speculating. It's not possible. Avang Manasa Gochara. So Prabhupada is quoting the scriptures and telling, one cannot perceive the transcendental name or form of the Lord by mental speculation. Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyaihi. Grahyam indriyaihi means blunt senses, including the mind. One cannot conceive or perceive the transcendental name or form of the Lord. So this Vishwarupa is a transcendental form of the Lord. Even though it is made of material elements, it is a transcendental form. That's why we are unable to see. Now, Arjuna was shown by Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. On the request of Arjuna, Krishna showed his universal form. But Arjuna was unable to see that form. Then Krishna said, you will not be able to see this form unless I give you divine vision. divine vision. So Krishna gave Arjuna divine vision to see that universal form. So it cannot be seen with these eyes. Neither one can conceive that in the mind by reading descriptions or by speculation. It's not possible. So Prabhupada is explaining another point here, that those who are very, very much advanced in material knowledge, they have titles like PhDs or whatever, their degrees they have. Now, simply the PhD degree or that study they have done of matter, that is not sufficient qualification to understand or to comprehend or to see or to perceive the universal form. It's not possible. The analogy is given, a frog trying to understand what is the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean. The frog's experiences of a body of water in a well, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 feet wide. So what can a frog conceive? How big is the Pacific Ocean? So in attempt to measure the dimension of the Pacific Ocean, a frog tried to expand its body and it simply burst and died. This is the fate of anybody who tries to understand or perceive the universal form or the transcendental form of the Lord by any material methods, by speculation or by their own sense perception, by their imagination, by their speculation. They cannot. And if they attempt that, they will keep on trying till one day they die and perish in that particular body with which they are struggling so hard. So this is the fact of the matter. So Prabhupada concludes this purport by telling, the Lord can reveal himself only to a person who is submissive and who engages in his transcendental loving service. Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grashyam indriyahi sevon mukhehi jighvado swayameva spuratyadaha. Beginning with the tongue, you begin to render service to the Lord. You vibrate the tongue and say, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You glorify the Lord. You chant his name using the tongue, vibrate the tongue, and taste Krishna Prasadam, relish Krishna Prasadam as the mercy of the Lord. Then, when we become submissive in this way, then the Lord is pleased to reveal himself. Because we should always remember, this Virat Rupa is non-different from the Lord. It's non-different from the Lord. So until the Lord reveals to any person who attempts to understand or see this Virat Rupa, the person cannot see by himself, cannot understand by his own independent efforts, or even by collective efforts of many big brains. They cannot understand that. Again, Srila Prabhupada's last sentence is telling, the demigods controlling the elements and ingredients of universal affairs prayed to the Lord for guidance. The whole, practically the whole of previous chapter, the 5th chapter, is demigods' prayers to the Lord. So they prayed for guidance. And therefore, the Lord manifested his gigantic form as he did manifest the Virat Rupa at the request of Arjuna. Same principle applies, that the demigods prayed to the Lord and the Lord manifested the gigantic universal form. So further description will be given by Maitreya, beginning from the next verse. I will stop here. Anybody has any questions, they can ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Yeah.
Prabhu, as you told that, Maharaj, as you told, like uh, uh, that universal form is made of the material and it actually unmanifests. It's manifested for the creation of the universe only. So how to understand about the Vishnus? As we see Vishnu, both the Garbhodakshayi Vishnu and the Shakti Vishnu are not present in the spiritual worlds. They are only in the material world. So do they also unmanifest or do they merge in the Mahavishnu, like when the universe is annihilated, or they are existing in the Mahavishnu at the time of annihilation, just like souls? So like, can you like tell more about that?
See, first of all, you have to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Soul, one soul. The same soul is present as Krishna, Rama, Vishnu, Narayana, Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, super soul, same soul, one soul. That is why it is so difficult to understand who is God. One soul, but he is present in so many forms. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anantarupam. Anantarupa, unlimited forms, but one soul, one person. So, form of Vishnu is the form of the Lord, one of the forms of the Lord, for a specific function, for a specific purpose. That's why you should understand original form means all these forms are a form of the original person, Krishna, Krishna's forms. Ananta Rupam, whose Rupam are they? They are Rupam of Govindam, Adi Purusham. So Vishnu is Krishna, another form of Krishna for the sake of this material creation, material affairs. So what happens to Vishnu after this whole creation is wound up? Vishnu is always present in the spiritual world as Sankarshana. So Sankarshana expanded and manifested as Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, Paramatma. But when the cosmic manifestation wound up, again Sankarshana is withdrawing his expansion. He can expand and manifest a form, a transcendental form of his own. He can withdraw whenever he likes. Whenever it is not required, he withdraws. Another way to understand is he becomes visible and he becomes invisible when required. Like Krishna is always there in this material world, but Krishna becomes visible when he incarnates as Krishna. He becomes invisible when he disappears. So this visible, invisible, appearance, disappearance. Because there is no birth, there is no creation, there is no destruction. As regards spirit, there is no creation, there is no destruction. That applies to even the Supreme Spirit. Next question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavad Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
My question is from the second canto, second chapter. Basically, here it is told before the chapter Paramatma in the heart. Before that, in the second chapter of the second canto, the first verse itself, it is written that prior to manifestation of the cosmos, meditating upon Virat Rupa, he, means Brahmaji, regained consciousness by appeasing the Lord. Thus, he was able to rebuild the universe. So, this is the translation. So, my question is, though Virat Rupa is imaginary, but
Virat Rupa is not
Brahmaji...
imaginary. Virat Rupa is not an imaginary form. It's a real form.
But why a pure devotee will meditate on Virat Rupa rather than meditating on Krishna?
Because it's a real form. It is the form. Whose form is it? It's like the materialists accuse devotees when they meditate on the Archa Vigraha, you are meditating on some statue. We are not meditating on some stone statue or some metal statue or some wooden statue. We are meditating on the Supreme Lord, the transcendental Supreme Lord, the real form of the Lord.
Maharaj, like impulse list, for them, it's more appeasing. But for the devotees, they want to meditate on Shyam Sundara form.
No, there is no difference between Shyama Sundara and the other forms of the transcendental forms of the Lord. There's no difference. Please understand, the form of the Lord, spiritual form of the Lord, is according to the devotee's relationship with the Lord. It's exactly according to the relationship of the devotees with the Lord. It is just like the deity form in the temple. Now, devotees have actually taken steps to get the form carved out of marble, Krishna Balaram out of marble. And then Prana Pratishtha is done. The Lord is invited to actually manifest his presence in that form for the sake of us to worship him. It is for our sake, so that we can worship him. We can offer seva to him. We can offer nice flower garland. We can offer nice dress. We can offer nice abhishek. We can offer nice food stuff. We can bow down. We can offer Sankirtan seva. You see, we can offer prayers. This whole devotional services expand and open up for millions of devotees by the Lord actually manifesting as the deity of Krishna Balaram in Jaipur. That's the mercy of the Lord. So, but where did it begin? Devotees want to install the deity. Devotees want to install the deity for the sake of this service, to open up, devotional service to open up for so many people. Under the direction of the pure devotee Prabhupada, of course, it is not independently done. It's always under the direction of the superior spiritual authorities, particularly the spiritual master. But still, how did this deity come into existence? It is because of the devotee's relationship. Devotee's relationship. So, Archa Vigraha is a manifested form in material elements for the sake of the devotees to offer worship. Archa means worshipable. It's strictly for the sake of the worship. Strictly for the sake of the worship. Otherwise, if there is no relationship of worshipping or offering, then for all practical purposes, what is that deity? It is a stone statue, marble statue. That's all. That's all it is. For all non-devotees, for all impersonalists, for all non-devotees, it is just a statue. That's all. And they will even prove that. They'll say, "Aapka Bhagwan hai idhar." Wo that invaders came and they broke the statue, they stole away the ornaments, and they did so much of damage to the temple the devotees had built. And what was your God doing? Simply doing nothing, because there is no God there. This is the argument of the atheists. So what is our understanding? The Lord is present only for the sake of devotees to accept their service, to accept their worship. Otherwise, it is just a stone statue. It is just a stone statue for the impersonalists, for the non-devotees, stone statue. That's all. Finished, over. So this you have to understand. Virat Rupa, for the impersonalists, for the materialists, what is it? It is simply so many elements have been combined and manifested as planets and hills and rivers and mountains and all these manifestation. Simply material elements combined, that's all. Now, how they combined, how they are working in perfect order, the sun is moving in its orbit, the seasons are changing, you see, that they cannot explain. None of these people can explain anything properly. They'll simply say nature, nature, nature. Automatically it's happening. What is automatic? Nothing is automatic. Only because the Lord has entered and He is making everything happen. So, Brahma meditated on the universal form. Arjuna offered prayers to the universal form. Beautiful prayers. 11th chapter, verse numbers 36 to 45. It is 10 verses. Please learn these prayers and go through these prayers very nicely offered by Arjuna. Arjuna is offering prayers to the universal form. He is offering prayers to Krishna. He is not offering some prayers to some imaginary form. Please don't think it is an imaginary form. Imaginary form cannot be the source of bright effulgence as if million suns had risen. Imaginary form cannot be the source of effulgence of millions of suns. Never possible. So, it is not an imaginary form. It is a real form. It is a transcendental form. Only thing is, it is manifest for a limited duration of time for the purpose of the devotees. That's all. Only for the purpose. Just like Krishna showed the universal form, and then after that, the universal form is no more there in front of Arjuna in the battlefield. It's not there. This whole universe itself will be there only as long as it is required. The duration of life of Brahma. After that, it's finished, over. It's all warmed up. The show is over. Krishna comes to this world, 125 years he is here. Visible to even people with ordinary vision. But after that, Krishna disappears, that's all. So like that, you have to understand in this material world, the Supreme Lord is manifest and unmanifest. Unmanifest, manifest, unmanifest. Always. But when he is manifesting, he never touches matter. He never assumes a material form. He never enters a material form. That's why the universal form description is, the Lord enters and does not enter. He has entered the elements, he has not entered the elements. Pravishtani, apravishtani. The Chatushloki Bhagavata, please read that. 9th chapter of the 2nd canto, the 4 shlokas. There is one verse which says, the Lord enters into the elements and he does not enter into the elements. So how is that possible for the Lord to enter and not enter? That is what is explanation of the 4 essential verses of the Bhagavatam. That was revealed to Brahma. The 4 verses were spoken by Krishna. Garbhodakshai Vishnu, actually, in his form as Garbhodakshai Vishnu, he spoke these 4 verses. And the essence of the Bhagavatam was revealed to Brahma. So, if you study carefully, you will understand. Gradually, you will understand it. Again, this has to be revealed within our heart, by the Lord being pleased with our devotional service. So the only way is we have to chant nicely. We have to do the devotional service, please the Lord, and then we sit and study or hear or read or discuss. Then everything becomes very clear. When the Lord reveals, only then it will be clear. Okay, I will stop here. Thank you very much for patiently hearing me. Hare Krishna.
For the time, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.